And we are live. Thank you for joining me again this week. Once again, it's Larry Williams, OAW Commander-in-Chief, and I'm here to bring you all yet again another Game of Thrones episode review right here on Otaku Assemble. Weekly, and as always, here to bring you the latest in this week's Game of Thrones episode review. And this is my review of Season 4, Episode 5, entitled First of His Name. Now, general thoughts on this week's episode. First and foremost, much better episode than last week. Let's see. With all the ground we covered in this week's episode, with all the surprises we got in this week's episode, and yeah, I mean, just not to repeat myself, but yeah, a lot of ground covered. Good heading into next week, and I feel like now we're finally back up to pace. You know, we're finally back to where we should be. This episode didn't drag as much to me. This episode didn't feel as dull as last week's. It seemed like they, sped things up to get back to where we were supposed to be. So, yeah, I think I pretty much covered everything, generally speaking, without getting into too much detail, because I'll do that in a couple of minutes. So, yeah, so that's pretty much my overall thoughts on this week's episode. Good episode, solid episode, back on par to where we need to be. Beautiful. All right, so let's go ahead and let's dive into a couple of things that I want to discuss. And actually, for the most part, there's only, let's see. Yeah, there's only really four main things I want to discuss in this review. And these are pretty much the four main events that took up the bulk of time within the episode. But that's going to be the events in King's Landing, the events in the Eyrie, the events in Marine, and then, of course, the events at Craster's Keep. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to tackle each one of those and give you all my thoughts on those scenes. So first off, the things in King's Landing. First shocker, first surprise of the episode. Now, I might be speaking a tad bit prematurely, but did we just see Cersei behave like an adult in this episode? I mean, it really did trip me out during Tommen's, during his coronation, that Cersei actually stood there and had an adult conversation with Margaery, with a little sprinkle of a heart-to-heart. And then, I shit you not, I had to stop the episode and think to myself, when Cersei said that, oh, Tommen will need help, on the throne, and Margaery says, well, he has his mother, and she's like, well, a mother can only do so much. And she said something more along the lines of he'll need more. And then she looks at Margaery, and I had to stop that. I said, wait a minute, did Cersei just extend an olive branch? And then as soon as I play the episode again, keep it going, then they start talking about, the weddings that are supposed to happen. And that's when she popped the question, you do still intend to be queen? I'm like, hold up. Wait a minute. Cersei just extended an olive branch. Holy fucking hell. Okay, what's going on with this? Now, granted, when we fast forward to the scene between her and Tywin, that's more explained. It seems like Cersei has finally stepped back and taken a moment to really, I guess you could say, really acknowledge the position in which they're in. Really acknowledge, like, what's going on, where her family stands, and now that Joffrey's dead and Tommen's king, okay, what's the next thing we need to do to sort of secure our place, to solidify our rule? You know what I'm saying? So, yeah, I have to say, I was highly impressed with Cersei this week. Highly impressed. Because she's been bitching, whining, moaning, and complaining all season long. And then, the coup de grace, for me, anyway, was her scene with Oberyn. Now, granted, yes, her scene with Oberyn ended on the note about Myrcella, her daughter, and her wanting to, Oberyn to pretty much make sure she's safe, send a message to her, this, that, and the other. But when she questioned Oberyn about the trial, because remember, that's Cersei's very next scene after she got done speaking with Tywin. And their scene ended with the mentioning of the trial. And it was implied, or at least I got the the feeling that Tywin's final message to Cersei was somewhere more along the lines of, I know you blame your brother for what happened to Joffrey, and I know you want him to be guilty, but I'm gonna sort of, call this thing straight. I'm a judge. I can't really talk about the trial with you, but that's the implication I got, that Tywin is like, I'm gonna call it how I see it. In the story. And so when we fast forward to Cersei talking to Oberyn, and then what's the first thing Cersei does? She invites him to the garden, which that immediately, I was like, hold up, Oberyn, you better watch out now. The last man that walked through that garden with Cersei ended up with his head off his shoulders. Be careful, man. Be careful. But yeah, then when we get to the garden scene and they're talking about the trial, Oberyn pretty much tells her the same thing. It's like, do you think your brother did it? She's like, yeah, oh no, I know he did it. I know. I just want to know what you think. And Oberyn's more so like, well, we still got time, and we'll hear him out, and we'll get the truth out of him. And, of course, Cersei just kind of plays that off like, yeah, we'll get the truth out of him. But for a second there, before we got into the Myrcella stuff, I was like, wait a minute. Cersei's, she's starting to make some moves. She's, maybe it's just the nostalgia kicking in from the whole garden conversation. But I'm like, is this a trace of the season 1 Cersei that we're starting to see? Because for the love of the seven, if it is, thank you. Thank you, because I've been saying for the longest time, I wanted Cersei to get back to that point. I wanted her to get back to the position where she was more of a formidable figure rather than rather than sort of, I don't want to call her a hopeless victim, but this whole sort of crying wolf type thing that we've seen Cersei mold into the last, I'd say, season and a half, about halfway through season 2 and then all of season 3 for that most part. I didn't like what they were doing with her, and I'm like, no, what happened to the Cersei that had some stones, that had some gall, some audacity, some tenaciousness, some authority behind her? And I think we're starting to get that again. I'm seeing small traces of it, and I hope that follows through. We'll see. I will mention it was very interesting to see this sort of return to character with Cersei in an episode that didn't have Jaime and Tyrion in it. I'm not saying that that's the main reason, nor am I trying to imply that that could necessarily have something to do with that. I just find it highly coincidental, don't you guys think? Think about that for a minute. We're talking about the Chief Lannister, or at least for us, in that first season. Because remember, we didn't get introduced until Tywin until the second half of season 1. And then, yeah, Jaime and Tyrion both had their roles, but Cersei was the queen. She was the one that had the most power out of the children. So I just find it funny that it's the episode where we don't see the brothers, and that's when Cersei starts to sort of, get her shit together, if you will. Anywho, I also liked in her conversation with Tywin how Tywin sort of readdressed or re-illustrated just the significance and the sort of problem that they are in with the Iron Bank. This is kind of funny because I was thinking about this before the episode even aired about how that whole Iron Bank thing was going to work its way into the story. Because, the first time we ever even heard of the Iron Bank, I think was in season 2. No, season 3. It was last season when Tyrion became Master of Coin, and he found out that the kingdom was in debt to the Iron Bank. And then prior to this episode, it's already been mentioned twice in this season. So, of course, you know, I assume that it's going to come into play. And it looks like, based off of the preview for next week's episode, we're going to finally see it. But I just like how they set that up, how they foreshadowed that with Tywin having this one-on-one with his daughter and really illustrating to her, it's like, no, we owe a lot of money. And this is not one individual person that we can just sort of take care of or get onto our side to sort of nuke this thing. No, this is a body that has garnered the reputation of, you know, collecting what is owed to them, you know, to settling all debts. And I find it very funny that it's coming from the Lannisters, because what was the Lannister motto? You know, a Lannister always pays their debts. But when you have the chief fucking Lannister talking to Cersei about, yeah, well, don't know if we're going to be able to pay this one, I'm like, Jesus Christ. So we will see. I'm assuming that we're going to get a really good sense of where this whole thing is going when we finally get introduced to the Iron Bank next week. But yeah, I also found it funny that throughout this whole entire fucking conflict, apparently the Lannisters are going on broke. You know, that sort of reveal that their mines have been emptied for 3 years now. I'm like, geez Louise. Fake it till you make it, I guess. Maybe that should be the new Lannister model. Fake it till you make it. Now let me see, was there anything else in the King's Landing setting that I wanted to talk about? Talked about Cersei, talked about Tywin, mentioned the Oberyn scene. Nah, I think that's it for the most part. So now I'm going to segue to the Eyrie, because that was the what the fuck moment for me in this episode. So this week, we finally got Littlefinger and Sansa. You know, they made it to the Eyrie. And, you know, Sansa, you know, she's, I guess, I'm assuming that this is actually the first time she's ever met Lysa. Because, you know, because of their introduction to each other. I'm assuming this is the first time she's ever met her. But the fucking bomb that was dropped at the end of their introduction. Holy fucking hell. Okay. Now, for those of you all watching this review live, bear with me for a moment, because I'm still sort of in shock about the whole thing. Here's the thing. Now, at the end of last season, when I decided that I wasn't going to review the show anymore, I sat down with one of my buddies, and he pretty much filled me in on a bunch of stuff about the series, you know, because I pretty much told him, it's like, dude, I'm not reviewing it anymore. I probably won't even watch the show anymore. You want to tell me some stuff? Feel free to tell me. One of the things he did tell me, but he never said it explicitly, he almost implied it, was that Littlefinger was the one responsible for the whole fucking deal. When I say the whole fucking deal, I'm talking about the entire fucking story, the entire fucking conflict at hand. Because remember, how did this whole show start? With the death of Jon Arryn. And I remember asking him, I was like, dude, you read the books. Do we even know who killed Jon Arryn? I mean, because remember, that's never been said. It's never been said. It's never even been mentioned again since season 1, or at least to the best of my memory, it's never been mentioned since season 1. I mean, that whole mystery about the death of Jon Arryn pretty much died with Ned. So I believe, yeah, the way this whole conversation went about was, he told me that Littlefinger was the one behind it, but he never explained how. And the way he said it was almost like it was implied, sort of like it's referenced in the books, but it's not really said explicitly or something like that. I think he was holding back on me because they said it outright in this fucking episode. And the fact that Lysa was in on it completely fucking blindsided me. And I also think it was a great fucking ruse. I don't really think you can't really call it a red herring because we never expected Liza to begin with. But you got to remember, going back to season 1, how fucking feral Liza was, how just irate she was about what happened to Jon Arryn. And I think I mentioned it in my season 1 reviews, how it seemed like Liza, I don't know if she was like this beforehand, but it seemed almost as if she went batshit crazy with grief after Jon Arryn died, which was why she was so protective of Robin. And it explained, how her sort of like blind wrath towards the Lannisters. Remember, this is the woman who tried to wrongfully execute Tyrion, despite the fact that he wasn't her prisoner. He was Catelyn's prisoner. And Catelyn wanted Tyrion to stand trial for what he did. Liza was like, kill that motherfucker. And the only way Tyrion got out of it was the trial by combat. But to learn that she had the hand in it. She was the one who poisoned Jon Arryn. She was the one who killed her own husband. Wow. Now, yes, that I'm not trying to take anything away from Littlefinger. He's still the grand architect of this whole fucking conflict. And to this point, once again, like I mentioned in my previous reviews for this season, like I mentioned in my small council discussions for this season, I don't think we still know what Littlefinger's end-all be-all goal is, because he's never explicitly said that he wanted to be king. He never explicitly said out loud and straightforward that he wanted to sit on the Iron Throne. Never said that. But for fuck's sake, man. Holy fucking hell. It was that bastard all along. Or I guess a better way to put it, to make a Clue reference, it was the wife in the dining hall with the poison in the cup. Wow. Yes. And another thing that really tripped me out was her infatuation with Littlefinger. All right. So we find out she was the one who killed Jon Arryn, and it was all part of Littlefinger's plan. Then we move to the part of the conversation where we discover her infatuation with Littlefinger. Then we end on a note with a scene between her and Sansa where she literally goes batshit crazy and reveals envy of Catelyn. And she just straight up said that she blamed Catelyn for what she did to Littlefinger, and how Catelyn just more or less just sort of disregarded him, disposed of him, discarded him. I don't, Littlefinger, you're a nice guy, but I don't see you in that way. You're like a little brother to me. And apparently Liza held a grudge against Catelyn for that. That came completely out of left field. Completely out of left field. Now, hear me out. That's not to say that surprise or that reveal, that exposition, that's not to say that it was poorly done. That's not to say that it was poorly written. I mean, let's face it. This is something that was omitted to us, but it was from a character that we never would have had information from. You know what I mean? It's not like we spent that much time with Liza. And I mean, yeah, she never had that much screen time before. And hell, isn't this the first time we've seen her since... Is it season 1? I think it's the first time. This is the first time we've seen Liza since season 1. So yeah, she's the only character who would have that information. And of course, clearly Catelyn had no fucking idea about this. Because if she did, she never would have went to Liza in the first place. But wow. 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 Yeah, clearly the biggest fucking surprise of the episode. Wow. So now, since now that we know that apparently all of everything that's been going on so far is all of according to Littlefinger's plan, now I guess it's just a matter of time to see what's next on his list. I mean, let's face it. And you know, it's kind of funny because one of my viewers commented on my recent Game of Thrones character spotlight video, the one, I think it was either the one on Varys or the one on Theon, where they mentioned that a good idea for a segment would pretty much be like sort of this speculation video where I would talk about who I think would win the Game of Thrones. You know what I'm saying? Who I think would be the character to win it all, to be the last one standing, if you will. I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to comment on that right now. I would have to say, after this episode, it has to be Littlefinger. Because it seems like he's the only character at this point in time in the series where everything is going his way. And if you really think back on it, really think back on the last 3.5 seasons, he's the one character that's been met with the least amount of opposition in ratio to ambition, if that makes any sense. When you go back and you look at all of these ambitious characters, all the characters who are in a position of power, all the characters who are out to assume more power, he's the one that has been met with the least amount of opposing force. You know, you can't say it's any of the Lannisters. They've been fighting a fucking war. And you can't say it's any of the rebels because they have yet to win the war. But Littlefinger's the one that seems to, his plan's still working. It's still in play. And the motherfucker is even so clever that everyone that I just mentioned, he's smart enough to know to use these people against each other, which I wonder if that's part of his plan. I really do. Now, you all will remember, for those of you all who have been following my Game of Thrones reviews, I think it was back in season 2 I mentioned either from Renly or I think I mentioned from Stannis. Way back when I was talking about, you know, all the possible team-ups, all the possible alliances that could be formed. Because remember, season 2 was, you know, a clash of kings. That was the season where we got all the rebels, you know, rising to power and, you know, solidating their forces and whatnot. But I did mention that I thought that the one person that would come out on top when the dust was settled would be the person who was smart enough to pit their enemies against each other so that, you know, they would pretty much bounce off of each other, knock each other off the map, and whoever is the one left behind would pick up the pieces. They would be the ones to reap the benefits after the fallout. As of this episode, I think Littlefinger's that person. I think he's that guy that is in the best position right now to pull that off, more so than any other character. Oh, I will also make a note about this. Last 2 weeks in my small council hangouts, we've been talking about how Littlefinger's plan to save Sansa would actually work, because the fact that Cersei has it out for Sansa, and if Tyrion is convicted, they are going to, I think they are going to issue out like a manhunt for her because she could potentially be an accomplice. And I mentioned that I didn't see how Littlefinger would be able to pull that off, because once word gets out that he has Sansa, that immediately puts a spotlight on him and everyone is going to come after him. Well, here's a funny thing. This could just, I blame the show more than I blame myself, because I don't think it was visually explained in the show just how formidable the Eyrie really was. We know from season 1, you know, Tyrion's exchange with Bronn, oh, you know, they say it's impregnable, and Bronn says, give me 12 men and a couple of spikes, I'll impregnate the bitch. Yeah, really fucking difficult to do when there's one way out, one way into the motherfucking gate that is formed between two fucking caverns. The gate is forged in a mountain, and then when you look at the Eyrie, it is literally on an island. It's on a fucking pedestal over water with a bridge connecting it to the rest of the mountain. It's not even attached to the mainland. Now, I don't remember the Eyrie having that specific geographic advantage. I don't remember that. And I don't think it was ever really explained. Why? Because Littlefinger had to explain it to Sansa on the way there. He had to break it down, like, just how difficult it is to siege this motherfucker. But no pun intended, but Littlefinger has literally placed himself within a nest, overlooking everyone else. Once again, if anyone is going to win this fucking game, and if anyone is going to benefit from the fallout of the goddamn war, Littlefinger is both. Well, actually, let me see, how can I put this? Symbolically, physically, and quite literally in the best fucking position possible. Yeah. Might be time to pack it up, guys, because I said it back at the end of season 2. I thought the game was won after Blackwater. When the Lannisters and the Tyrells teamed up, that was the end of the war. And for the most part, I still agree with that, because no one of them has enough manpower. Not Stannis, not Balin, none of the other rebels. Hell, even Dany. We found out in this fucking episode just how many people she actually had, how much manpower she actually had. She only has 10,000 men. Fucking Robb had more than that. So yeah, that's not enough. I said it then, I thought the war was over once that alliance was made. But in terms of the game as a whole, yeah, the fact that Littlefinger's been able to pull all of this off for as long as he has, with no one being the wiser, with no one even being, I mean, hell, even Varys. Varys started to get onto his trail, and then his main informant got taken out, cutting the tie altogether. And I got a feeling that the body count is going to increase even more. Littlefinger's going to cut off every possible person that he can even conceive the notion of being a liability. He's going to cut them out. I got a feeling I know who it's going to be. But yeah, if he keeps going at the way he's going to win this fucking game. That's all I'm saying. So, yeah, I think I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to conclude my Littlefinger discussion right there. This motherfucker's about to win the game. Right under everyone's fucking nose. All right. So, second half of this review. This is going to pretty much be me discussing Dany's story and then Jon's story in that order. And you know what? One of the main reasons why it took me so long to actually get this review started was because those two scenes were the hardest for me to really sort of wrap my mind around. And this is what I mean. With Dany and with Jon's scenes, I was conflicted with both those scenes. Now, granted, I will admit this is more of a subjective issue. This is more of a taste issue. My main problem with Dany and Jon's scenes in this week's episode is it's both a matter of writing and it's both a matter of acting, but it's pretty much their scenes were not sold to me personally as convincing as they could have been. You know what I mean? The scenes were fine. The scenes were fine. Jon's scene, I love Jon's scene. Both scenes were fine. But in terms of setting up for the next chapter, setting up for what's the next objective, setting up for where their stories are supposed to lead next, I just didn't feel sold on them. I didn't feel convinced. I didn't feel like the scenes were delivered in a manner in which I was like I could get behind them. You know what I mean? Like I could be like, yes, all right, let's go, let's do this, yeah, let's do this, let's get this thing done. I didn't feel that. I didn't feel that. And like I said, this is more of a taste issue. It's more of a subjective issue. Although I do have objective comments about Jon's scene, which I'll get to in a minute when I get to Jon. First off, let me talk about Dany, okay? Now, granted, Dany only had one scene. It was the council meeting where pretty much her and her advisors were trying to determine what their next move was. First off, beautiful fucking idea to have this conversation take place, because this is when they find out about Joffrey's death. Duh! Remember, she hasn't mentioned Westeros at all for 2 damn seasons. For 2 seasons, Westeros has not come out of her mouth. So why would that even come up again? Because the king is dead. The kingdom is vulnerable. Now may be the best time to attack. That makes perfect fucking sense why they would be discussing it. Also, I like the fact that one of my predictions earlier in the season came to pass. The fact that the fallout from Dany's conquest to Estepor and to Yunkai has resulted in turmoil. That her siege of these cities did not last once she moved on. Beautiful. Beautiful. Makes complete fucking sense. Because I could not for the life of me wrap my head around how she would be able to keep doing what she's doing if she just goes from city to city, takes it over, overthrows the slave masters, frees the slaves, and then leaves. You don't set, well, we did learn that she actually did leave some people behind to govern the cities in her stead. We did learn that. But you yourself aren't present, nor are you leaving behind any of your advisors. It's not like you're leaving Jorah in Yunkai. It's not like you're, well, Estepor, I guess, would be the first one. It's not like you're leaving Jorah in Estepor. It's not like you're leaving Barristan in Yunkai. You know, you're pretty much leaving it to people you feel would do a better job governing it because they're from said city, but you had all the manpower. You had all the firepower, quite literally. See what I did there? You had all the firepower. So yeah, when the big gun leaves the town, who's going to enforce your rule? And with what? So yes, I like the fact that that was brought to the table. But that brings me to the problem I had with Dany's scene was how everyone's talking about, before we even find out about what's been going on in Estepor and Yunkai, everyone's talking about, what's going on in Westeros and what we need to do in order to, to make a move in Westeros. And I do like the banner that was there. The fact that Jorah and Barristan are still playing up sort of the angel and the devil on the shoulder, the two sides, the two Jiminy Crickets in Dany's ear. One says one thing, the other one opposes. He retorts, he finishes the argument with his final reply. So I did get that. This was the part that just kind of conflicted with me. And like I said, once again, ladies and gentlemen, this is subjective. This is a matter of taste, personal issue. But this is what it was. After Dany finds out, first off, Dany has the mindset, it's like, okay, yeah, the Westeros deal, I'll consider it highly. It's in the back of my brain. It's up for discussion. But then when everyone leaves, after Jorah tells her what's happened in Estepor and Yunkai, then we get a private moment between those two. And what ends up happening is Jorah mentions that to her, and Dany replies with, You advised me against acting rash back in Karth, and I didn't listen to you and see how well that turned out. So now I'm going to put Westeros on the back burner and I'm going to attend to the cities that need my help. But the way I just said it to you, ladies and gentlemen, just now, that's not the way I got that scene. That's not the way I interpreted it. That's not what I got from it. Not in that manner. And this is what I mean when I said it wasn't convincing. It didn't sell me. I wasn't sold on it. Number one, I felt like there should have been more opposition between either Jorah and Barristan, or Jorah and Dany, or Barristan and Dany. And this is why I say that. This is a pretty big decision that Dany has to make. Probably the most important decision she's had to make up to this point in time in the story. Very big decision. Do I go off, sail to Westeros and do my conquest there? Or do I return to the cities and sort of, perform damage control? Since I've already made my mark there to begin with. One is shrouded with the sense of ambition. The other is shrouded with the sense of obligation. But at no point in time in that scene did I really get that from Dany. That I didn't feel like she felt obligated to do so. You know what I mean? Her final line in that scene felt more of, well, here's another distraction to keep me from Westeros. That I know. I'm probably being unreasonable with that statement. I'm probably being unreasonable with that comment. But that's how that line came off to me. And like I said, either it's the way it was written or it's the way Emilia Clarke said it. But it just felt like that, like, nah, fuck Westeros. Just another distraction to keep me from, being more involved with the main central fucking plot of the story. Instead, I'm going to continue to be distracted on my side stories, not being involved into the fold yet. And that's not, you don't want a viewer to feel like that. You know what I mean? I would have been more convinced. I would have been more sold on it if there was a legitimate argument in play. Like, let's say, because even Jorah, I swear to God, I swore that Jorah flip-flopped in that one scene. Because remember, when they were talking about Westeros, Jorah was the main one opposing it. And then it would seem as if by the time him and Dany got into private, he swapped. All of a sudden, now he's more along the lines of the Westeros idea, and Dany has to go against him to help everyone else. Or maybe he was still more concerned with what was going on in Esteport and Yunkai, and Dany decided to agree with him. Maybe that's what that was. Like I said, once again, the confusion all came into play by the way the lines were written and the way they were delivered. Anyway, final note, wrapping up pretty much Dany's discussion. Like I said, if there was a legitimate argument where one of the two picked a side and debated that side almost to death, like, no, this is what you need to do, this is why you need to do it, and this is how we're going to do it, and then the other says, no, instead I need to be doing this because of this reason, and this is how I'm going to do it, I think then it would have been much more convincing, and it would have, I think it would have really added some weight, some stones to the characters, because this is the one thing about Jorah and Barristan that I do feel a little bit let down upon. I don't feel like Jorah and Barristan are really asserting themselves in a manner in which I would have liked. And this is what I mean. I understand. They're both servants in a sense. They're both advisors. They've both dedicated their cause to helping Dany with hers. That makes sense. But common fucking sense, and I'm sorry, I can't get past it. Barristan, okay, first off, Jorah is old enough to be her father. Barristan is old enough to be her grandfather. No, I think that since we're talking about two characters who are grown as men and well within their ways, that whenever Dany decides to peer away from their advice to sort of, because remember, Dany's been doing this shit for a season and a half. They say something, she goes against it and does whatever the fuck she wants. And keep something in mind, Dany is still supposed to be a young woman. I mean, I think, I know that the show has greatly, the whole being faithful to the characters' ages in the books, that got thrown out with the pilot. I know that. But let's face it, Dany is still a very young woman. I would argue she's probably roughly my age by now in this fucking story. She's probably early 20s, maybe. So what I'm saying is this. The fact that we have these three characters and we get all these scenes and we get all this banter and whatnot, and these characters are talking about some serious stuff. I mean, they're talking about conquest. This isn't, oh, Dany, did you do your chores? Oh, Dany, don't date that guy because I disapprove. Oh, Dany, don't go to that school because I want you to go to my alma mater. This is, Dany, are you, don't take this kingdom. Don't kill these people. These are some serious fucking issues that they have to deal with. And I just don't like this, what they've been doing with these characters where, I mean, Barristan and fucking Jorah all they can do is just comment on it and Dany will do what the fuck she wants. I feel like at some point in time, they should strong arm her fucking ass. Like, no, you're fucking up. This is what you need to be doing. Now, granted, of course, that won't happen for a while. Why? Because Dany's winning. It's not like she's losing the conquest she's doing. It's not like she's failing to siege these cities. She's winning. She's winning across the board. She has more manpower than she's ever had before. She has more people at her side than she's ever had before in terms of like her council. She's laid waste to city after city. She's freed slaves, and then the coup de grace above it all. Despite what she does to the slave masters, let's face it, you're talking about taking over these cities with the least amount of bloodshed that I'm pretty sure Jorah and fucking Barristan would have expected. I'm talking about these guys fucking warriors. They've seen some shit. And the fact that Dany's been able to pull all of this off with only killing, what, maybe 100 or less people? I mean, it's kind of hard to argue with the girl, but still. Do you guys understand what I'm saying? Like I said, this is strictly a taste issue. These characters aren't really acting in the way I thought they would. And I just felt like when it came to that conversation between Jorah and Dany, if Dany were to either oppose Jorah and be more, have that conviction about, no, I need to do this because I'm obligated to do this for this, that, and the other, I think that would have just rung so much louder. That would have resonated much deeper than just her sort of like, but if I'm going to take the 7 kingdoms, I need to be more than that. Poetic, yes. Convincing, not so much. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. Still a good scene. Still a damn good scene. Despite my little quims about it. Still a damn good scene. And now that's going to bring me to my boy Jon and what happened up north this week. Okay, first we're going to get into the objectiveness of it. This is actually a legitimate fucking quarrel I have with the scene. This is very fucking legitimate. It's very fucking objective. Feel free to argue with me or disagree with me in the comments below. I don't give a flipping fuck. This much is still true. For those of you all who caught last week's small council discussion, me and my co-host, we talked about what was going on with Jon, what was going on with the Night's Watch, what was going on at Craster's Keep, and how Bran got involved in that whole scenario. that was presented to us in last week's episode. And we threw around the term filler a lot. Now, first off, I want to explain something to you guys. When I use the term filler, filler is not to me. Now, granted, this could go against the fucking Webster's dictionary, of course. Now, usually when you say filler, you're pretty much implying to a part of the story that does not exist in the source material, something that is added to the adaptation for the sake of either filling up time, or for the sake of adding something additional to the story, for the sake of emphasizing something or explaining something or whatever have you, whatever purpose you decide to use said filler for. That's what the definition of a filler is. It's pretty much an additional scene that is exclusive only to the adaptation and is not present in the source material. I use filler in that manner. I also use filler in the manner that it is just simply a scene that is used to accommodate a longer period of time. This definition encapsulates the idea of in-canon filler. There is such a thing as in-canon filler. What is in-canon filler, Larry? In-canon filler is when you take a piece of a story, a part of a story that is in the canon. It is in the source material. But for the sake of the adaptation, you stretch it out. You add things to it, either whether it be an extra character or a change of setting or an extra event, or it could just be extra dialogue. But you pretty much, you take the scene that exists in the source material and you stretch it out so that it can fulfill whatever goal you have for it in the adaptation. That is called in-canon filler, but for the sake of my argument in the small council discussion, I just used it simply as filler. The term filler facilitates both definitions and both purposes. Now, in regards to Jon and the Night's Watch scenes in last week's episode, there was a lot of filler. Remember, I'm not a book reader, mind you, but I can tell what is filler and what isn't. Why? Because it does not have a place in the overall plot. It does not make sense. It doesn't fit. There's always something about filler that gives it away to where you can tell it just does not fit. You know, it's like trying to fucking, it's like trying to nail in a screw, a flathead screw when you have a Phillips. It just doesn't fit. It's still a screw, and it looks the same, but it just doesn't fit. Now, in the small council discussion, we were talking about how pretty much the scenario that we saw play out in this week's episode with Bran being apprehended at Craster's Keep and Jon going to Craster's Keep in order to take care of the mutineers, how the fact that that those two characters being in the same place at the same time, it was too coincidental. And that's what gave it away as filler, because it didn't make sense. It didn't make sense in a sense of continuity, meaning the time lapse of the actual story, the time lapse of the events that have taken place. You know, by this time, Bran should have been much farther north than Craster's Keep. He shouldn't have even been in the same vicinity. It also didn't make sense in sense of the shift of focus for Jon. How it seemed as if Jon almost expected to find Bran there, or at least had he was worried about Bran. Remember the scene with him and Sam in last week's episode where he's talking about, okay, this is Craster's Keep. What are the chances that Bran has made it there or has made it past there by now? You know what I'm saying? Why would that even cross Jon's mind if they were not already setting up for Bran to be there? Do you see what I'm saying? There are so many things in the episode that lead to this just being coincidental, and it gave it away. The one thing I didn't expect in the small council discussion was when my co-host SMX Wing said that Locke himself is a filler character. He's a character that doesn't even exist in the books. Now, first off, that didn't matter to me. I liked Locke as an antagonist. I thought, first off, the actor that portrays him and just just the way he looks. I mean, yeah, that looks like a ruthless, cunning motherfucker that I wouldn't have at my dinner table. Like, clearly that's a shady fellow. And the fact that, he was able to infiltrate the Night's Watch the way he did, and all this is that, I liked all of that. But this is where it screamed filler. You want to know another way how you can always tell something is filler? When you have a scene, when you have a scenario, when you have a part of the story that is filler, and the story concludes, the scenario reaches its resolution, the conflict resolves itself in a matter that completely reestablishes the status quo, as if the events of the scenario were completely unconsequential. That's what we got this week. That's exactly what we got. Locke infiltrates the Night's Watch, goes to Craster's Keep with Jon, finds Bran, and tries to take him. Now remember, at this point in time, Jon doesn't even know that Bran, the Reeds, and Hodor are at Craster's Keep. Why? Locke got to him first, pinpointed where they were, because he was the scout. He went, scouted out the place, found where Bran and them were, left, reported back to Jon so that when they made their move, he knew exactly where to go. He goes after Bran. Now, first off, Bran taking control of Hodor, that was fucking awesome. That was fucking awesome. And I wonder if he can actually, that does bring a lot of questions into play about whether or not he can control other people or just Hodor. But here's the thing. Locke sneaks in, takes Bran, tries to pull him out there. Bran takes control of Hodor. Hodor takes out Locke, and then Bran escapes. Bran escapes. Doesn't even make his presence known to Jon. So now, ladies and gentlemen, look what has happened. Locke, who was a filler character from Jump Street, is now dead. Gone. And no one even knows how he was murdered. Except for, of course, Bran, Hodor, and the Reeds. Gone. Jon and them don't even know how he was murdered. They even said it when they found his body. What in God's name could fucking do that? And then, Bran is completely removed from the situation. Completely removed from Craster's Keep. He goes. He leaves. And no one's the wiser. Even Homeboy, who was ruling over Craster's Keep at the time, who had his duel with Jon, didn't even mention to him, hey, I have your little brother. He didn't, even when it seemed like Jon might win that fight, at no point in time did he ever try to use Bran as leverage. Hey, don't hurt me, don't kill me, I have your little brother. You want him alive, you spare me. It never happened. That never happened. This whole little scenario resulted in what? Jon goes back to Castle Black. Bran goes back up north. Nothing. Nothing changed. Nothing changed. About, nope. They never met. Never exchanged words. Nothing changed. Now, yes, ladies and gentlemen, it did provide a great amount of suspense. And it did sort of heighten things. It sort of brought up the danger a bit more for this mission. It sort of, what's the term I'm looking for? What's the correct term I'm looking for? It raised the danger level. You know what I'm saying? We were at DEFCON 2, 3, and then we jumped to DEFCON 5 and 6 when we knew that Bran was in danger. Okay, fair enough. But something has to be said for the fact that this was a completely unconsequential scenario. It didn't change anything. It didn't matter. Not at all. It didn't matter. Was it bad? No. But, ladies and gentlemen, that is going to bring me to pretty much the only other thing about the scene that I didn't like. This is when we get into the subjective portion of Jon's scene. Now remember, what I just talked about was objective. You can feel free to debate about it all you want, but those are the cold hard motherfucking facts. Okay? Bam. That was that. Now this is the subjective. This is just a fucking taste issue. So I started wrapping my brain around, why did the writers do what they did? What would possess them to even come up with that idea, to even try to put Bran and Jon in the same vicinity if they knew they were never going to reunite them, if they knew that the chance of a reunion wasn't going to happen? And I think that's what it was. I think it was to tease the audience with the small glimmer of hope, the small chance that there might be a reunion of, you know, the Stark brothers. You know what I mean? Now, if that was the case, then that means the writers were trying to, or at least I would think, that the only real reason to tease your audience with that is to try to trigger some type of emotional cue in the viewer. Try to, you know, try to make it feel like, oh, they were so close, but so far. Oh, man, we could have had the reunion. Oh, it could have happened, but it just didn't. And it didn't work. Or at least not for me. It didn't work. And it didn't work as well as it could have. Now, here's my thing. I think this could have been a much more, if you really wanted to hit the viewer with that sort of emotional blow, I think this could have been much more interesting. What if Jon and Bran actually did reunite? What if they actually did speak with one another? And instead of just going their separate ways without even addressing each other, without ever reuniting, without ever even seeing each other, instead of doing that, what if they forced themselves, they made the decision to go their separate ways despite the reunion? Now, yes, I understand, Larry, you're reaching. Oh, wait, Larry, no, you can't do that, man. You can't do that. You're a critic. You have to analyze and critique what was there. The second you start rewriting the episode, you're stepping your bounds. And even with that idea, you're sort of reaching. I understand. But hear me out. This is what I mean. Let's say hypothetically that Bran and Jon did reunite. And, you know, maybe they spoke for a while. Didn't need to be a scene, didn't need to be a long conversation. Just, you know, a simple exchange of words. And pretty much what ends up happening is, instead of Jon acting within character, you know, being the protective brother figure, being, oh no, Bran, it's dangerous out here, you need to come back to Castle Black where I can protect you. Instead of that, you know, instead of Jon acting in that manner, what happened if Jon started off like that? Like saying, hey, you need to come back with me. And Bran argues with him. He says, no, I need to go up north. I've been having these visions. All this stuff's been going on, and I feel like the answers are out there, and I need to seek them out. This is something I have to do. And then after, what have you, maybe a couple of more lines going back and forth, maybe even somebody getting emotional. Like, let's say maybe Jon even gets pissed off. And it's like, no, I'm taking you. And, you know, maybe Bran, hell, who knows? Maybe Bran can even shed some tears, you know, sort of cry about the whole bit. But what if it gets to the point then where Jon sort of looks back and think, you know what? I can bring you back to Castle Black, but I know what's coming for us. So at that point, I can only protect you so much. You know, whenever Mance comes knocking at the wall, I can't stay in the room to make sure no one comes after you. I have to be on the front line. I have to lead these men. I have to see this through because Mance is going to be coming for me. Remember, keep that in mind, because I don't really think they've touched on that in the series. I don't really think they've illustrated that point well enough in the series. It's not only is Mance coming for the wall, not only is he coming for Castle Black, not only is he coming for the Night's Watch, but the second that Mance finds out that Jon was a double agent, he's going to be coming for Jon. He's going to be coming for Jon. And that realization above anything else could potentially spark something in Jon's head in this hypothetical that, oh wait, but how can I protect you when I'm the main, when I could potentially be a main target? No, that would actually put you in more danger, because being cooped up in Castle Black, you're pretty much just a sitting duck. You're just waiting for it. Now, yeah, it's a long shot, might even be damn near impossible, and it makes absolutely no sense from an adult standpoint. Clearly, this is just a dreamer standpoint. But if you go up north, if you cover your ass, if you play your cards right, you might be able to bypass this whole fucking thing. Just that possibility, because remember, what is Jon's whole mentality? Mance is coming to Castle Black, like it or not. Come hella high water, he's coming. Pretty much the point I'm trying to rise at, ladies and gentlemen, without going too far into my own story, is this. A hypothetical scene where Jon acknowledges the fact that maybe Bran would actually be safer north of the wall. That maybe he actually would stand a better chance on his own out in the wild because he wouldn't be in the exact place where Jon knows the imminent threat is coming. And also, keep this in mind. They could have even thrown a nice little reference, a nice little nod to Jon's scene in season 1 where Jon has to choose duty over personal desire, duty over family desire. You know, Jon wants to protect his little brother, but where is he needed? Castle Black. Who is his duty to? The Night's Watch. And what is his mission? To stop Mance. Bran has a mission of his own, and it could work the same way. Bran could be like, I want to go back with you. I want to be with my brother. I want to be with you. But my calling is elsewhere. And then what we would actually get is a mutual decision to go their separate ways. Instead of just this coincidental pity-patty bullshit, a mutual decision, an acknowledgement. You know, hell, could have even been a nice passing of the torch. That could have been Jon's scene where he sort of sees Bran and acknowledges him as like, yeah, this isn't my baby brother. You know, last time I saw you, you didn't even know if you'd be able to, you were asleep. We didn't know if you would make it. You didn't know if you would walk again. But here you are, facing the dangers, being your own man. Ladies and gentlemen, that would have hit here a lot harder than trying to pull at some fucking emotional strings. That hypothetical would have been an emotional blow, like, oh, damn. Like I said, completely subjective, and this is all a taste issue. That's all it is. What we got was perfectly fine for what it was. It wasn't. I mean, like I said, other than the whole, filler stuff. It still worked. It still worked. It still played out well. It was still well acted. Jon's fight scene was fucking awesome. Bran taking over Hodor, that was fucking amazing. Posed all these other fucking questions. The suspense was definitely there. The tension was definitely there, where we didn't know what was going to happen to the Reeds. And then, hell, how did we end the episode? A reunion between Jon and fucking Ghost. I mean, that made the episode for me. When Jon got Ghost back, that made the episode for me. So it still worked. I'm just saying, and this is all I'm saying, if the writers wanted to hit a real emotional cue, if they really did want to strike an emotional blow, if they wanted to get the feels, that hypothetical I posed, I think, would have been much more effective at that than what we actually got. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. So that's pretty much my thoughts on the whole episode. Like I said, it was a damn good episode. Much better than last week. What with everything we saw, with all the ground we covered, and hell, I think, isn't this my longest episode review? Because there was so much shit to talk about. What else could you really ask for? Except, like I said, the few things I would have liked to see, but like I said, it's all taste issue. That's all it was. So anyway, with that being said, that's going to conclude this week's Game of Thrones episode review. I want to thank you all for joining me again this week. And please, in the comments below, feel free to let me know your thoughts on this week's episode. And also, I'd be interested to hear what you guys think about the preview for next week's episode. So other than that, oh, another just a brief update for you all. For those of you all who have yet to follow my Game of Thrones character spotlight videos, you might want to do so. With the video that was released earlier today, I announced the Spotlight Sweepstakes. That is a contest that I am hosting. I am holding on my videos for the next upcoming 3 weeks, the next 3 weeks, where pretty much it's a viewer's choice for my character spotlight videos. It's pretty much in the same manner as what I do with like my discussion of the weeks, my favorite hero, favorite villains, my advice corners, you know, all my advice corners, my top 5, pretty much all of my interaction videos. It's pretty much like that. But the way the Spotlight Sweepstakes works is this. For the next 3 weeks, on the character spotlight video, you all, the viewers, will get the opportunity to request a character for me to discuss in next week's video. And the way it'll work is you guys will comment with your suggestions. The suggestion that gets the most thumbs up, the most likes, that's the one I'll do in the next video. But should you be the one to get the most thumbed up suggestion, you will then enter the Spotlight Sweepstakes. And what the Spotlight Sweepstakes will pretty much be, it will be a raffle where I will take the winners of the 3 viewer choice suggestions, respectfully being the YouTube winner, the Facebook winner, and the Beamly.com winner. I will take those 3 people. I'm going to put them in a hat, shake it up, pick a person, and the winner of said raffle, not only will you get the opportunity to single-handedly select the character for the Spotlight video of week 10, but you will also earn a guest spot on my week 9 Small Council live discussion. So that is the Spotlight Sweepstakes. So for those of you all watching this review who have yet to enter, please feel free on my Theon Greyjoy video. In the comments of that video, leave your suggestions for which character you'd like to see me discuss next week, which is technically this week because that video will be up in a couple of days, and thumb up the one you want to see. And like I said, whoever gets the suggestion with the most thumbs up, you get a spot in the sweepstakes. And this will, like I said, this will occur for the next, well, yeah, the next 2 weeks, because the next one will be for the OAW Facebook page, and then the one after that will be for the Game of Thrones TV room on Beamly.com, which, if you guys are not members of the OAW Facebook page, or if you are not following the Game of Thrones TV room on Beamly.com, please feel free to do so at this time. As always, you can find the link to the OAW Facebook page on my channel, and you can always find the link to the Game of Thrones TV room on Beamly.com in the description box below. So with that being said, this has been Larry Williams, OAW Commander-in-Chief. I am signing off, and until next time, peace.